Welcome to Perfecting the Interview webinar hosted by CSLD. From this video, I want you to learn three main things. First are interview basics. Second, how to prepare for an interview. And third, I want you to learn about a tool that will help you improve your interview skills. So first up, let's talk about the purpose of the interview. This is mostly about fit. And so for you, it is making your pitch to the company to establish your qualifications and experiences, the things that you're going to bring to the table that they are going to benefit from. Overall, it is establishing a sense of fit, and this goes both ways. For you to figure out, are you a good fit? Do you want to actually work at this organization? And then for the company, it's, do we want to hire this person? And finally, it's your chance to learn about the company. Hopefully you've learned about the company already through the job posting, through how they present themselves on their website. But this is your chance to ask some great questions, to learn maybe who your supervisor would be, your colleagues, what is the environment like. You get a lot more detail about maybe the day-to-day and is this actually a place that you want to be long-term. I think one really helpful thing as we think about maybe how to interview is what are some of the most common mistakes, because from these mistakes we can learn what not to do. LinkedIn does a lot of research every year on some of these different career topics, and so they've compiled from their own research what are some of these top mistakes that they're seeing. First is failing to research the company. There's nothing worse than going into an interview completely unprepared and not knowing what you're stepping into or what this company is about. So it's very, very helpful to spend as much time as you can doing that research, spending time online, getting to know who this company is, so that way you can speak directly to their needs. Next up is having no questions for your interviewers. Again, like I said before, this is your chance to really learn yourself. And so you should absolutely approach this with a sense of curiosity and wanting to know more about the company. It also just shows your general interest in them. Next is appearing uninterested. This both speaks to maybe a genuine sense of disinterest, but it may actually just speak about your body language. You might be genuinely interested, but if your face is showing maybe a lack of interest, or you're not demonstrating good listening skills when somebody else is speaking, that could make you look uninterested, which is not good. You want to present yourself with positivity and excitement, and smile as much as you can. Show that energy about this particular company. Next is lying about achievements. I don't think I have to say much there other than present yourself truthfully and honestly. Next up is dressing inappropriately. It's very important to dress for the job that you're going for. And so it can be helpful to maybe know what sort of culture they have. How do people that go to work every day at that company, how are they dressing? And you should be thinking about kind of dressing, half step above the type of, dress environment at that company. Rambling is another mistake, and this often comes from not being well prepared. So it's helpful to know what you want to say about yourself going into an interview, so that way you can be really targeted and clear with what you're trying to communicate about yourself. Finally is not following up. It's very important to keep the conversation going and maintain that relationship. So send that thank you note or reach out through LinkedIn, but definitely keep the relationship going. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the types of interviews that you can expect. The three along the top, phone, a live video, or a recording video, these are most common in the early rounds of the interview process, oftentimes referred to as like screening interviews. This is where they're just trying to get a sense of a lot of the different candidates, and so they're going to do that through shorter, technology-based outreach. And so maybe it's a phone interview with a recruiter, or a video recording where you're on Zoom or Skype or some other video-based platform, or you are requested to record a video of yourself and submit to a portal or via email. So all of those maybe pertain to different types of technological skill. Are you comfortable speaking to a video screen? Do you have a laptop that has a camera on it? All of these things are considerations for these types of interviews. The ones along the bottom, the one-on-one, panel, or group interviews, these tend to be a little bit more common in the later stages of the interview. One-on-one, I think, is classic. Everybody knows what this is like when you are sitting down with an interviewer and they ask you questions. Panel and group, maybe you're not as familiar with. A panel is when you are with maybe a group of interviewers. So there are 2 or more people that are asking questions. And a group is when you are with other candidates. And so maybe there's 1 or more interviewers and there are a number of candidates being asked the same question or being put in different scenarios. And so it's really helpful to kind of think through and maybe know ahead of time what type of interview is going to be present in the interview that you're going to be going through. If the recruiter or your point of contact has not told you what to expect, I don't think it's inappropriate to follow up a little bit beforehand and ask maybe who you're going to be meeting with. That might give you a sense of what type of interview you can expect. Like we said before, what to wear is an important consideration. You definitely want to dress appropriately. So there's two really common types of dress: business professional and business casual. Business professional is much more common in business settings or financial settings like accounting or the finance sector. Business casual might be a little bit more for like small businesses or startups. Ultimately, when you're kind of choosing the level of dress that's appropriate, always think about dressing a little bit more fancy than what the people working at the company dress on a day-to-day basis. So how to prepare for an interview? You want to go through these 3 steps. Number 1, know yourself. Number 2, know the job. And number 3, practice. And we're going to go through each of these. So first up, it's very, very important to know yourself as best as possible, because ultimately all these questions that you're going to be getting from the interviewer are going to be about you and your experiences. And so you need to be able to clearly articulate all the things that you're going to bring. These are some questions that will help you in this reflection process. Have answers ready for all of these. These may not be the actual, interview questions that get asked of you, but something similar is going to be asked. And either way, it's going to help you in the preparation. So what are key experiences, jobs that have prepared you for this role? What are your strengths and weaknesses? How do your hobbies and your interests intersect with this job? What makes you qualified for this job? And what is your secret sauce? What's unique about you? If you have answers to these questions, then you'll at least be able to start to communicate what makes you different than the other candidates and how are you really best aligned for the position that you're going for. Next up is knowing the job. Absolutely review the job description again. I have a sample job description up here on Handshake. Definitely save all of the ones that you applied to because you're going to want to refer back. And so when you just take a look at the qualifications list, or again, just generally what they're looking for, that's going to help you prepare, because you can expect the types of things that, the bullet points that are showing up on these minimum qualifications, there are most likely going to be questions asked related to these things. And so when you look at like the excellent writing and communication skills bullet point, you can probably expect some sort of question around, tell me about a time when you had to communicate to a group of people, which gets at your public speaking ability, or attention to detail. Tell us about a time when you had to, be really careful about a particular task, or tell us about your organizational ability. All of those are going to be kind of coming from, again, what they're really looking for. And so the job description alone can provide a really great resource as you prepare. What sorts of things do you want to address in the interview? Obviously, we cannot predict what questions are going to be asked in an interview, but there are some really common interview questions. And so if you prepare for these, then you're at least, maybe one step ahead of knowing what's going to be asked. So these are the most common ones. Tell me about yourself. This is the most common interview question of all time. And we're going to go through like how to answer that particular question, because that can be a tricky one. What are you looking for in a new opportunity? Why do you want to work here? Describe your current and most recent job. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your strengths and weaknesses? You have to have answers to these questions because, again, I think you can expect, if not these questions, something very, very similar. So I do want to circle back to this tell me about yourself question. Again, this is the most common, and so we want you to be able to answer this well. Sometimes people get a little overwhelmed because it's such a broad answer or a broad question. How do I talk about myself in such a short period of time? So really focus on these things. So when you're talking about who are you, highlight your major, what you're studying, maybe your current job title or recent job title, and a career goal. Talk about some of your key expertise highlights. So maybe, brainstorm, 2 to 4 past experiences or skills that you think help make you stand out. And then ultimately, why are you here? Highlight your desire for this particular position or your desire to work in this particular industry. I think one helpful framework that I've found is thinking about this in present, past, and future. And so this just sort of gives you maybe steps to go through as you're answering this question. So to kind of present myself, hi, my name is Brandon Jacob. I am currently a career counselor at San Francisco State University, where I work with students every day to help them prepare for their careers. In the past, I have a degree in higher education and student development, and I began my career as a resident director in residence life on a small liberal arts college campus. In the future, I would like to pursue a PhD in higher ed and become a leader of a career center. So this sort of follows the structure of present, past, and future to tell a little bit about who I am and what I bring to the table. So I hope that you would maybe find that framework helpful as well. Now I want to talk briefly about behavior-based questions. These are becoming more and more common because the best way to predict future behavior is past behavior. So these are questions that get at your past behavior. So these are often framed up as, tell me about a time when you solved a problem, you resolved a conflict, you failed, so on and so forth. These prompt you to tell stories, to give very specific examples. Now, these are both difficult because sometimes it can be really difficult to come up with a really clear story right off the top of your head. And so the best way to prepare for these is through preparing stories ahead of time. Try to brainstorm as many stories that illustrate these points and write them down in your notes. Now, these are really helpful to you because they help you stand out from other candidates. Because maybe the way that you solved a problem is going to be very different than the way somebody else solved a problem. Your ability to tell a compelling story is really going to help you differentiate yourself from other candidates. So I have to say again and again, prepare as many stories as possible so that way you can really differentiate yourself. Now, a framework to answer behavior-based questions is the STAR method. So this sort of takes you through the situation, in which case you give some of the background and the context, the task, which is describing what challenge needed to be addressed. What was the action item that needed to be addressed. The action is, what did you actually do? And then finally, the result gives the key accomplishment or what happened, the growth that occurred. So to give you a quick example of a short STAR story, I will give an example from a student. So I was in a class where I had to present a topic, and the professor gave groups the chance to come up with their own topic. My group got together and we had a really difficult time coming to consensus. What we did was we paused, everyone got a chance to share what they wanted to address as our topic, and we voted on them. And the topic with the most votes won out. And so when we did that, we were able to come to consensus much more quickly and dive right into our project. And we ended up completing the project, and we got an A. That was the result. So that quickly kind of walked through the story in a quick way that hit the key and most important points. So when it comes to asking questions of employers, these are some examples. Can you describe a typical day in this position? What have you liked most about working here? What problem or challenge are you hoping the person in this position is able to address? And when do you expect to make a decision about this position? Another great thing to think about is look over the job description and see what are they talking about in the job description that you want more clarification on. And so you can say, hey, I saw in the job description that you expect this person to do X. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or maybe you want more clarification on something you saw on the website. I saw on your website that you're focusing on these types of projects. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Ultimately, I want you to just demonstrate a whole lot of curiosity, and so you can really genuinely get to know this company. So the final stage is practicing. Practicing is so important. It's not enough just to know the basics of interviewing. You actually have to practice and do it out loud. Don't just think through what you want to say, verbalize it, because things tend to come out differently when we speak them than what we think in our head. And so I really want you to think about using this great tool, Big Interview. This is an online platform that focuses on building your interview skills. So there are a number of learning modules, videos that you can learn some really great tips and tricks, the best practices of interviewing. But then you can practice common interview questions. So as you can see on the screen here, a pre-recorded person will ask an interview question, and you can record yourself responding to that question using the camera on your device. And so then you can actually review your own interview skills. This is very helpful because you could see, okay, where did I get tripped up? Where did I make some mistakes? Where do I need to improve? You can also share those recordings with other people. You could share them with friends and family, professors, with career counselors, and you can solicit feedback. That is really helpful. Interviewing is a skill. It is a skill that you can get better at. And the best way to do that is to practice, to spend a lot of, I would say even hours of your time with this practicing. So Big Interview is a great tool that I absolutely want you to use. But at the very least, get with a friend, get with a family member, stand in front of a mirror and practice some of these interview questions. So my final tips are: be yourself, be confident in yourself and your experiences, and be willing to talk about yourself in a way that really sells yourself. Make that pitch. Number 2, be concise. When you're answering interview questions, you should plan on speaking for 2 minutes or less. Keep it to the main points. 3, tell stories. Even if you're not prompted to tell a story, give story examples. This is a really helpful way to differentiate yourself. And 4, practice. Like I just said, the only way to get better at interviewing is to practice.